Hey, I'm Johnny with Slacker, and I just wanted to answer some of the most common questions that we get on the website today. Have any suspension setup questions? Drop your question below, and if we use your question in a future post, you get a free Slacker. Should I sit or stand when I measure my sag? So this is a really common question I get. I do see a lot of the pro riders now are starting to stand on the pegs and stand with their arms next to their hips to take the measurements. Personally, I don't recommend that at all unless you're like a professional rider with a professional suspension tuner. If you look at the owner's manual, it always states clearly, sit in a normal riding position with your hips above the pegs. So that's what I recommend. Full gear, helmet, any of the gear you're going to wear, full tank of gas, level ground. You want to make sure that your hips are sitting directly above your pegs and you're sitting in a normal riding position like you're heading into a turn. That'll make sure that the bike's balanced generally across the track. When you stand to measure your sag, there's just too much that can happen. You're so tall, you have a lot of purchase on the bike. The slightest movement can throw it off by 4 or 5 millimeters. So we do not recommend that unless you've figured that measurement out by yourself through testing or with a professional suspension tuner. Does it matter where you measure your sag on a dirt bike? This is a great question. There's so many people that think you just measure vertically or whatever is an easy reference point to get to, but it's just absolutely not true. On the KTMs, Huskies, and Gas, they actually provide a mark that's vertical of the rear axle. That's through their engineering. That's what they recommend in the owner's manual. For the Japanese bikes, they recommend measuring from the tip of the swing arm to the back of the seat bolt. That is to accommodate the arc of the axle. So as the axle travels up, it's also going to move forward. And they're just kind of taking that measurement across the arc of the axle, if you will. So with Slacker, on any of the Japanese bikes, and in general, if you're using a tape measure, measure from the tip of the swing arm to the back of the seat bolt. If you're using Slacker, you'll want to follow the arc of the axle method, where we just basically take a piece of string, pinch it on the swing arm pivot and the rear axle, swing it up to find that arc, and that's where your clip goes. So it absolutely matters. We just set up a bike for this nice guy in the pits here, and so he had tried to measure his sag this morning. He had it set at about 98 millimeters, which is, he had been measuring it vertically, and vertically it said that it was 105, but if you measured it correctly, he was only at about 96 millimeters. So we loosened his spring up, the bike calmed down, he's super happy with it now. So always make sure on the Japanese bikes, including betas, you want to, and Sherco, you want to take that arc of the axle like we show in the video user guide. Does Slacker work on forks too? It does. Most of the street guys use it on forks. That's primarily the measurement that they're concerned with on street bikes. Dirt bikes, not so much. Most of the bikes, the forks aren't adjustable. The measurement's not going to do you much good other than tell you have the right spring rates. However, I do use them on air forks. I used them on the old triple air chamber forks. Super helpful instead of chasing pressures, to just be able to measure, set the sags at 70 millimeters, and know that the bike is sitting correctly. I also use them like on the KTM and Husky on the AER forks. It's just good because it gives you the ability to be able to see how the bike's actually sitting. And now on a regular spring fork, you could use it to determine if you have the right spring rates, but I think it's overkill. You tend to match the front spring rate to the rear spring rate, so it's kind of overkill to use it on the fork. I don't think you really need that measurement unless it's a new bike or you're struggling with your fork setup. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more great content like this.